Welcome to the Real Life Groups Leadership Podcast, a conversation about creating small groups where people grow in spiritual maturity in relationship. We're focused on you, the small group leader, giving tips and tools to help you lead effectively. Hey, welcome back. I want to thank you for joining us for today's episode. We're super excited for this discussion on the Real Life Groups Leadership Podcast. My name is Chris. I'm your host, and I'm sitting with two of my friends, Evan Meske at our Post Falls campus, groups pastor, men's pastor, a variety of roles here, and Fred Bosse, team leader for our groups team, and just really excited for what we're talking about today. And I'm sure you're going to lean in for this one because we're talking about branching small groups. We're going to talk about 3 tips, which at Real Life, we like numbers. So we have the 7 essentials, the 5 spheres, we have all sorts of things. So we're talking about the 3 tips. That sound good?
3 tips.
3 tips for branching a group. And again, this has been one of our most discussed, asked questions from group leaders over the years.
Yeah.
And for a lot of reasons, sometimes we have struggle, failure to do that well. There's hurt feelings. And, again, it's a value for us. We're going to talk about that through this episode. And again, I hope we'll finish with some ways that you can put into place in your group, some things that you can build towards, because it's not a slow process. It takes time.
Yeah.
It is a slow process. It takes time. It's going to be a journey. So maybe Fred, just kick us off with why this matters, why this idea of branching makes a difference.
Yeah, it really is crucial to what we do.
And define what branching is too.
Yeah, okay, I'll start that. Branching is when a group, an existing group, raises up a leader to start another group.
Another group is formed.
And that can happen in a variety of ways. It could just be, it could be a leader that's raised up that takes over the existing group and the existing leader goes and starts a new group. Or it could be leaders are raised up and they leave to start a new group. And or it can sometimes, not the most preferred where they kind of split down the middle.
Half and half.
Half and half. That's sometimes it happens, but we try to let that happen organically as much as possible. So that's what a branch is, and like I was saying, it is vital for 2 reasons. One's practical, and the other's philosophical. So or missional, because our mission is to reach the world for Jesus, and it's to help people grow in spiritual maturity.
Wow!
And so as we are doing that, as people are growing, they are some people are going to grow and need to step into leadership. We need to give them places to play where they can lead other people. On a practical side, as we're being inviting and trying to connect the unconnected, we always have people that are trying to get connected into a group. And, we can become ingrown and not have enough room. Or we can keep adding people, but pretty soon a small group doesn't stay small when it starts to get,
Absolutely.
20 people in it or whatever.
Yep, it's
and
real.
It's just not as effective for the small group discipleship. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really good. Yep.
I get asked a lot, how big should your group be when you branch? And I always say, size is a terrible reason to branch a group. The reason to branch a group should be you've raised up a new leader who's mature in Christ who can then start to make disciples of others.
That's a great point.
But size should not be the dictator.
Love that. Yeah. And I think that's really important in the mix of this is that, it's the drive that we see in the Word, Jesus' investment of the disciples, and then the releasing them to go and make disciples.
Right.
That initial small group became many small groups, and that was from the very beginning was a model that was
when
there.
3,000 people were added to their number on the day of Pentecost, they were still meeting house to house, and they weren't all in one house.
Absolutely.
They weren't in that upper room anymore.
Yeah, talk about church growth. It grew, and they had quickly to solve it. And again, you go back to when Jesus says, go and make disciples, what they understood was what they had seen, and the investment, intentionality they had seen, they're now replicating.
Yeah.
And so as you're, a healthy group, there's just going to be that place where you grow. Now, I will say this maybe before we jump in. I'd love, Evan, you're super good on our team. One of the gifts that you bring is sarcasm. Now, it's a spiritual gift. It's just God's given it to you. And so I was thinking, before we jump into the real practical 3 tips, if you could share maybe the antithesis, the toxic way to branch a group.
Yeah, literally this morning, Fred texted me, hey, thoughts on branching? This is what I texted him back. Number 1, make it a surprise because people like surprises. Number 2, assume everyone feels valued and cared about. no need to waste time telling them again. And number 3, leave the details vague. Nobody wants to be boxed in with too much clarity.
Totally. Yeah. So that's a great place to start. And I think, your gift here is helpful because that's just ridiculous when you think about it.
Yeah.
You want clarity. People want to know what's happening. They don't want to live in assumptions. And so that is a super great place to start with. Really where we're going to go is let's talk about 3 tips to really leading a branch well. So who wants to start? Give us the positive.
Evan, you're the wordsmith here. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. After that, I wrote this down. Communication, consideration, and celebration will help you to avoid isolation, speculation, and frustration.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Let's unpack it. That's super good.
This comes from years of experience here.
Yeah. And that's what I think is really neat about having you guys here is that you guys have walked through so many groups, so many great branches, so many dysfunctional and, splits, people leaving for the wrong reason. And so I think you guys do bring that. Really all of our groups team, I think all of our campuses is a great resource, by the way. If you're ever struggling what to do, that is the first line of defense is process with your coach, with your groups team. I think that's where we want to start. But let's talk about these 3 things that you guys identified because I think these are really good. Maybe Fred, kick us off with communication. Talk about that.
Yeah. I think communication starts day 1.
And what do you mean by that?
We want to communicate what the purpose of our groups are.
Great.
Which we have a saying that's we want people to grow in spiritual maturity and relationship. And because of that, and that we're also, as a church trying to reach the world for Jesus, and that we want to help connect people. And so when we're casting vision on a regular basis in our groups, it helps people be reminded that there's something bigger than just, meeting together with people that I love and getting into God's word. Through the years, every time I cast vision, I'll ask my group, what's the purpose of group? And, I always have people, even though I cast vision for years, they say, for the relationship. And that's for the people in your group, relationship is going to be the key reason that they come. They want to be part of the community that you create. But as an intentional leader, we have to continue to remind them, like, hey, we're all growing. And as we grow in spiritual maturity, somebody here is going to feel called to lead or maybe be challenged to lead, and they're going to respond to that, and they're going to start their own group. And so some of you aren't going to be here with us the whole time, and that'll be kind of a sad day, but at the same time, it's a good day. Yeah,
and relationship continues even when a group has branched.
Yes, if it's done well.
Yeah. That's a good point. If you're doing it in a dysfunctional way, and if we have to do this, you can really hurt relationship.
Yeah. And even then, sometimes you do your best, and there's still people that get hurt. But
So communication. Anything else you want to add to that?
There's always a tension between relationship and the mission. And part of our mission is in relationship. So it makes it a struggle. And so I tell people it should be a struggle because if the parts of a small group are like helping people grow in spiritual maturity in relationship, okay, once we grow to spiritual maturity, what do? That dictates that we have to branch. Now in relationship, if you've done a good job with a relationship, of course it's going to be a wrestling match, but the kingdom wins when we let the mission win out over the relationship. And some of those relationships stay tight forever. I've got people in my first small group, I'm still super tight with them. Other ones, I don't talk to quite as much. We high five in the foyer because they're leading their own small group. And we know we're on mission together and we get to spend eternity together.
That's so good.
And so it's actually a great thing when I can high five those people. We used to be in a group with them. Now they're on mission. They're making disciples. So are we. We're all going in the same direction.
I think that's so key because what we're trying to communicate and go back to over and over again is the why, the vision and the mission of the church. The purpose of a small group isn't just relationship. That's an amazing kind of outcome. And Jesus did it in relationship, but he didn't only have relationship. He had a purpose for them. He had a plan for them. And I think that's when we can get off track is when a group just goes, I just love these people and I'm just going to, we're just family, and I'm never gonna change. And I think that's when you just get a few degrees off, which is again, that's a great byproduct. but that's not the main reason we gather.
Well, I respond that way, you know, because it is a natural.
Yeah.
Like we talk about group dynamics, right?
Yep.
Forming, storming, norming. We did a podcast on that, and then ministry, administering, and then multiplying. It's part of that. But you know, I always tell people that bring up the family thing. I said, yeah, you know, I have a son that just got married and left home, and we're sad that he left home. Yep. But it would be much sadder if
he stayed at home.
He stayed at home and he's playing video games in my basement at 30, totally. Right? I mean, that becomes dysfunctional.
The mission, there's a purpose.
There's a purpose and a mission, right?
That's a great picture. Yeah. Okay, so communication, often that we're talking about the why, vision casting in our groups, you know, even in the one-on-ones, you know, between those sessions, the, you know, drawing in maybe that apprentice. Let's talk about this consideration. What does that mean, Evan?
Okay, so to consider how everyone is going to feel and think about what's happening.
Yeah.
And I've seen this happen over and over and over again, and people will short circuit the communication and thus not consider how people are going to react and make some assumptions. And so you can either branch well or you can branch quickly.
Yeah, that's good.
And so here's what I encourage people all the time. Like, okay, if I'm branching a group, Fred's going to be the new leader. I have to call every single person in the group. Yep. Fred has to call every single person in the group and make sure that they feel welcomed and wanted in both places. Because even if Fred's going on Tuesday night and my group's on Wednesday night, and everybody knows that Torrin can't possibly make Wednesday night, he will feel left out. Because people's human nature, if there's a way I can feel devalued, I usually find it. And so we want to make sure that in order for it to be a celebration, everyone feels welcomed, everyone feels wanted, everyone feels valued.
So good.
To both of the people.
So you're actually trying to enter into the world of what are they thinking? You know, what is the emotions they're going through? And if this is their first small group, they're probably going, I just finally made friends. And, you know, kind of back to our first point, you know, you're gonna take these away from me. You're gonna, because of your church and what your church wants to do, you know, all those things I've heard. So you have to be really caring, empathizing.
And to help people get outside of themselves, my question usually is, aren't you glad that there was room for you in this group?
That's a great way to say it. I love that.
And you go, what about those other people who don't yet have this amazing thing that you've gotten to experience? Don't you want this for them?
Yeah, it's great. I love that. And I think that just goes into the heart of, we are working with people who have, you know, all sorts of things in their mind, all sorts of challenges they're facing, and that small group is a huge place. And again, I think we would go back to over and again, reminder that, you know, this doesn't mean that we're just ending relationships. You know, some of my best friends are people who I've been in small group with before.
Right. And you don't want to, and you don't want to create, like, you know, the memory of, you know, being the last picked at a kickball game in third grade, right? You don't want that. And, you know, sometimes you think, oh, well, we're the leaders. Evan and I, let's just take the list of people in the group. You choose who you want. I choose who I want. And we'll tell people where they're going to go.
Yep.
And that is horrible.
The other horrible way to do it is, hey, we'll just put it all on them. I've literally seen this. I went to a branching party, which was not communicated well to anybody. And on the spot said, okay, we're going to branch. They're going to lead a group. We're going to lead a group. Everyone, we want you to pick who you're going with.
Oh my gosh.
It is literally kickball. It's third grade kickball.
So now we've put them at a spot to make a terrible decision to reject somebody. So
they had to walk over to that side of the room.
So here's what I found, though. If I was branching that group with Fred, I would get together with Fred and we would figure out what's the best case branching scenario that would put people in the best position for everyone, the groups themselves, you know, us and all that. And then if I had someone I really want Chris with me, I'm going to call him first. And I'm actually going to give him a reason to come with me. And when I give you a role or a reason to come, I'm batting 1,000 right now. Every time I give you a reason, hey, Chris, I need a co-leader in the group, and I really need you to play that role with me. I know Fred and I fought about you, and we considered this, and that's why I'm calling you first to get ahead of him. But I'm giving you a purpose for the group.
Yeah.
And Fred would call up Torrin and say, hey, what I really need in this next season is someone who can help carry the conversation. And you do that so well. Would you please consider coming with me? And, again, Evan and I talked about this, and he'd love to have you in his group too. But here's why I really think you'd be a valuable asset here. And you can actually get a group to branch really close to what you would think is ideal.
But you also give them the out, but hey, if you want to go with that, that's fine.
That's good. Well, and I also hear you guys saying, so there's consideration of the people, their emotions, their processing, but you're also considering some of the details as you're beginning to talk about. There's going to have to be, who's the next leader, who's going to host this group, childcare, all these things that we've talked about in previous episodes. You're considering, and which is why it takes a little bit of time.
There's another thing to consider, and we don't have a woman around this table, is that there are spouses involved, and that
the relationships,
the relationships there is sometimes different and tighter, and for women, the branching can be really hard.
I think that's a fantastic reminder that, the emotional temperature, a lot of the assumptions that are made, you check with the women in your life, check with your spouse if you're married, check with the gals in the group. You're bringing in some of these key influencers because they know better a lot of times than maybe the group leader does. So let's finish with the last one, which I think is, I love the reminder of, communication, this idea of consideration of where people are at. But if we don't celebrate celebration, we kind of miss what we're doing. So let's talk about celebration for a little bit. Why do we celebrate?
Celebration is important because people will aspire to the things that we celebrate.
Wow.
Yeah, I got that from Evan a long time ago.
That was from Jim.
Yeah,
actually.
There you go. Well, I'll give you credit instead. Anyway, so we want to celebrate things because, we are accomplishing our mission. And when we accomplish our mission, we're doing the things that God's asked us to do. That's worth celebrating. Man. And it also takes kind of takes away the sting of the separation relationally that is naturally going to occur. But it also encourages people who are maybe sitting on the fence, and also those people that are being sent out. We send them out with encouragement, and we're edifying them as they go out, and so they feel supported.
That's good.
And and we just they start off on the right foot.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things we started doing here at the Post Falls campus, I think has been really neat to see, is we'll often celebrate our new group leaders from our church services, kind of like we celebrate baptisms. It's, hey, here's a step of growth. And one of the comments that I've heard a few times now is, that guy's leading a group? Man, that's cool. Maybe I could do that, And it's like, honestly, it's, I kind of put this pedestal of, group leader. And when I go, man, I know that guy and he's stepping into it, that is a really powerful statement because that is showing God stretching someone that a year or 2 years ago, no way. And I think that's all of our story. It's like, I never would have thought I was leading a small group, but someone thought I could. And little by little, I was given responsibility. So we celebrate it. Yeah. Love it. Any last thoughts on that, Evan?
No, Fred.
I love
Fred
it. He nailed it. He nailed it because he quoted you. Perfect. It's great. So we started with, the poor toxic version of branching a group. And then we went to, here's some intentional strategies to branch a group, which I love even the statement that you made early on, Evan. Maybe repeat that. What's kind of the outcome of that? What do we avoid?
Oh, yeah. We're avoiding isolation, speculation, and frustration. If people aren't communicated with well, they feel isolated. I feel like I'm on my own. Everyone else is in the know, even if that's not true.
Right.
And I just feel left out.
Man.
And the speculation, in the gap of communication, I'm going to make assumptions. And those assumptions generally are not healthy for most people when I'm feeling left out.
Absolutely.
And so that communication, that consideration of knowing people are going to automatically do that helps us to do a lot better job. And the frustration, it'll automatically lead to frustration. I'm going to focus on the negative generally before the positive. So when Fred talks about, celebration, let's make this a celebratory thing that we can say, man, look what God's doing. Look at all the amazing things that we get to be a part of. And they're going to go, there's some of it that's hard, but you're right. That's the thing we're striving for.
Right. Because that frustration, there's a saying that when new coach, new players, right? So sometimes people will take a branch as an opportunity to leave, right? And And that I've seen that happen during an unhealthy branch, but with a healthy branch, I don't think I've ever seen that unless it's, just a natural thing that's going on. But when people are frustrated, then they start again filling in the gaps and say, well, I don't want to be in group. This just doesn't work. I've had people say, it's like, it does work, and you're seeing it work. But if you're not casting that vision, if you're not celebrating those things and communicating it well, then they will start to get the bad attitude on that whole thing.
Another aspect of celebration I've started doing the last few times we've branched, which is, I think, worked very well, is once we branch, we say, okay, so this next Christmas, we're doing a Christmas party with both groups.
That's great.
Not forever, just this next Christmas.
Right.
That's awesome.
And all the new people get to see, this is, again, vision casting. This is what we're about. And wow, what a great group of people. And so hopefully next time they're able to be a part of that, but it gives a good vision toward branching. And we get to talk about man, it was so great in those seasons we did group together. And now you guys are getting a journey with these amazing people.
That's a great idea.
And so
I love it. And one of the things I was thinking about through all this is a reminder that we are working with people with emotions, and they're fearful. And I think just to kind of remember that human emotion of working with people, that because even in the best scenario, even with an intentional communication, consideration, celebration, people are going to get hurt. There's going to be frustration. It's possible. It's going to be less possible than your antithesis toxic launch. But that's what we're working with. We're working with people, trying to help them grow in spiritual maturity. And I think the outcome for me is so exciting because we're seeing, and this is just a celebration of what's happening in all of our campuses. Literally hundreds of groups that are growing, that are branching, hearing about our North Campus launching new groups, and Hayden just, exploding and having so many new people, Coeur d'Alene getting a new building and preparing for all those new connections, because we don't believe in just showing up on Sunday. It's moving them into relationship. And to me, it's why we do what we do. One last reminder I wanted to share with you. We were just talking about before. We don't want to miss that nothing that we do in ministry, we want to do isolated. And so one of the reasons that we invest so much in tools like this, but even more importantly than this, is a team of groups, pastors, and women's leaders that are there as oversight and coaching. And, if you're thinking about a branch, process with one of these guys, process with your leader. And it never hurts to get outside counsel. It always is a benefit to pray through, know the implications of that, know the background of that group. Those things are so helpful. Just remember you have that support system. Again, thanks for being here today. Last thoughts as we're done today?
I'm good.
So good. Man, thank you guys. This has been really helpful. I was taking notes in my head. I'm taking them. We're going to have some great show notes, by the way. Check out realliferesources.org. Hope you'll stick with us. And one reminder, it would really be helpful if you would like and share this resource with those that you're in group with. Maybe it's your apprentice. Maybe it's someone you're thinking about branching a group with. This would be a great tool to share with them. And again, we're grateful for all that you do in our church, helping people grow in spiritual maturity. We'll see you next time. We are grateful for the investment you make each week as you reach the world for Jesus, one person at a time, and make biblical disciples in relational environments. For notes from this show and other great resources to help you grow, visit realliferesources.org.